everybody grieves differently. But what if someone's grief reshapes into something harmful? Grief is meant to heal, but in the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon, twisted into guilt, obligation, control, and sometimes leverage. For example, imagine a family where the mother has lost her husband. Her grief is genuine, but over time it becomes a way to control her children. Whenever her son wants to move out, she says, "If you leave, I'll be all alone. Do you want me to suffer even more after losing your father?" When her daughter considers befriending and going out with someone whom the mother dislikes, her response could be, "Your father would never have approved. If you loved him, you would honor his memory by listening to me." Even small decisions like taking a vacation are met with, "How can you think of enjoying yourself when I'm still grieving?" Here, grief is no longer just sorrow, it is a lever of guilt and obligation. The children feel trapped, unable to move forward without betraying their mother's pain. People would want to know, how long is the normal bereavement period? There is no fixed or normal timeline for bereavement, as grief has no expiration date or set stages. However, mental health professionals and organizations note that the most acute daily symptoms typically soften and become easier to manage somewhere between 6 months and 2 years. The timeline for processing loss is highly personal, and how long it lasts depends on the depth of your relationship, your coping mechanisms, and your support system. From a private healing process to a public instrument of power. When things become further serious, the grief no longer is just an emotion. It becomes a currency of influence. The grieving person may not even be fully conscious of what they're doing. Sometimes it's a desperate attempt to keep people close, sometimes it's intentional. Either way, the grief shifts from being a private process of healing to a public instrument of power, turning bereavement into a manipulative grief. In the grief manipulation scenario, the person who is afflicted with bereavement would use their own pain as leverage to achieve a much greater result than they could on their own. They may use their guilt as a tool and say, "If you cared about me, you wouldn't leave me alone right now. You must keep me in the limelight." They make others feel obliged through their suffering and may frame their grief as a debt others must repay. They might say, "After everything I've lost, the least you can do is stop and let me do what I want." They may want to control others by constantly emphasizing their vulnerability, for instance, always wanting to be home with their kids. Using their fragility, they can discourage others from disagreeing, asking questions, or setting boundaries. Society hesitates to push back against someone who appears broken, giving the grieving person subtle control over decisions. Coping with bereavement. While there are many traditional grief work theories, psychologists Margaret Strobe and Hank Schutt have developed the dual process model of coping with bereavement. This theory suggests that healthy grieving is not a one-way grief work that is merely loss-oriented. It is rather an ongoing dynamic process of switching or oscillating back and forth between confronting the pain of a loss and engaging with everyday life. To simplify this theory, we can illustrate the dual process model by superimposing it onto an actual pendulum motion. The healthy grieving lies somewhere between the two extreme coping mechanisms, namely loss-oriented and restoration-oriented. Grief doesn't disappear, it transforms. Each day we learn to carry it a little differently. Help yourself and your loved ones in need before the grief takes the path of destruction. Stop, take a break, and learn to cope in a balanced way. Like and subscribe for more insights on emotional well-being. Share this video with someone who might need it, and leave a comment about what helps you cope. Take care of your heart. It's doing brave work.